follow-up on yesterday's theme.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
You know, people say you don't have to celebrate Christmas just on one day. You don't have to celebrate MLK Day just on one day either. Actually, from a logistics point of view, it's a lot easier to talk about the day in its current meaning the day after or beyond, because those who are observing the day are busy ceremonially. So that's how it works out. Glad to have you aboard. Thanks very much for tuning in to my State of Mind. Clearly, the country is between a rock and a hard place right now. The impeachment trial in the Senate has formally begun literally as I speak. We tape the show in the 1 o'clock hour each and every day, Monday through Thursday. We tape two shows on Thursday, one for Thursday, one for Friday. And so we're going to have to split screen pay attention, those of us who work in the media. That's not your obligation as a citizen by law or by job description. It may be your civil responsibility, and that's part of the challenge here, right? Here's what the network had about the proceedings prior to the formal start of the trial today.
A fight is brewing in the U.S. Senate over how the impeachment trial of President Trump should proceed. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell unveiled the resolution that will be argued today, laying out rules for the trial. The proposal says each side will have 24 hours over 2 days for opening arguments. That will be followed by 16 hours of questioning by senators. Only then can they debate and vote on whether to have witnesses.
It asks the Senate to sprint through the trial as fast as possible and makes getting evidence as hard as possible.
Majority Leader McConnell says he used President Clinton's impeachment trial as a model for this one.
What's good for President Clinton is good for President Trump.
But one big difference is none of the evidence collected during the House impeachment inquiry will be admitted automatically. The Senate will have to vote to enter it. Opening arguments are expected to get underway tomorrow, with both the House managers and President Trump's legal team slamming the process. The House managers prosecuting the case say Senate Republicans are helping President Trump block access to documents and witnesses.
This is not a process for a fair trial. This is the process for a rigged trial. This is the process if you do not want the American people to see the evidence.
In a legal brief, the president's team calls the case against him flimsy, a brazenly political act, and the result of a rigged process. The trial is expected to last several weeks.
I got to tell you, this is some crapshoot that the Republicans are playing here. This is like the Evelyn Wood speed reading version of the Bill Clinton trial. The idea that a 24-hour time period to present the case from each side will be consolidated in a 2-day period of time means that at 1 o'clock they started today. Well, they'll start tomorrow with the actual presentation from the case managers from the House. But they go to the bathroom and stuff, you know, and they have a little lunch, and I think they should have dinner, right? So it is going to be 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning that they're still going to be at it. And I don't know what that's going to do to the American public sentiment about this. Clearly, I was thinking about it the other day. Actually, I was thinking about driving in. Like tomorrow night, I got to do the public address for URI basketball. It's Wednesday night, we got a game. There'll be 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people there cheering on the Rams. People watch the Friars. People have things to do. There's NAACP meetings, I guess. Stuff is going on. So catching this stuff in a shorter time period is more difficult. But will the public, whether it, meaning you, will us together, will we resent that the opportunity was rushed? I don't know. I think so. It doesn't mean there won't be an acquittal, but there might be a lot of resentment. And this whole thing really does play for election 2020, because I don't think there's anybody that's willing to bet the House or $5 on acquittal. We'll see, man. We'll just we'll take it as we go, right? All right. So interesting enough, before we get to the issues of what MLK Day present and just reminders about things that need to be discussed, I wanted to follow this one situation that happened yesterday. Here's a headline. Now, forgive me, because this is an online headline. You see newportri.com. It's the same thing as the Projo. They feed the Projo. This is the same online headline that was in the Projo's publication yesterday, and if you can read it, it says, Ed Commissioner Infante Green, Rhode Island, a place where black and Latino people not wanted. I thought, holy cow. And in fact, Linda Borg's story quoted that in a consolidated version. And I looked at that and I read it on the air yesterday and started to conduct a conversation on it. And in fact, I asked Jim Vincent, who's my TV guest coming up in a second, about it on the radio yesterday. And he definitely ignored how I read it, thinking I misstated it. That's not what she said. Here's what she said.
I come from a place where African Americans and Latinos are one. That is not the case here. You can't fight the oppressor if you're fighting the oppressed. So let me tell you something. That has to end here and now. There are only 4 races. So I'm pretty clear where I am. If you're not clear that I'm black, then we have a problem.
Her point was, and Jim will probably elaborate on it, but the thing that was incredibly dangerous about this, she talked about black and Latino not being one. Here, she feels like they were where she came from, in the Bronx. That minority issues in general, with education, are kind of a consolidated thing. For a headline like this, put it back up again, if we had on the radio yesterday not pointed this out and raised some heck, there's a chance that this would have been a front page story today in the Journal. Do we have the actual front page headline? We do. I didn't tell Eric about that, but Anita put that in. Why don't you point that out to it? Because here's the headline that was there. In fact, this is not a quote. This is a journalistic license paraphrase. A place where black and Latino people are not united. She said not one. And it just would have been a terrible thing that you just can't unwind. It's a lesson in journalism. Listen, it's a human mistake. I get it, but you got to pay attention to this stuff. And, whew, Jim, this would have been.
Yeah.
This would have been terrible because it would have caused a conversation. Listen, if she wants to make that statement, I'll take that one on because I don't know that I would even debate. If anybody said that we live in a state where black and Latino people are not wanted, in context, that might be legitimate. But that's not what she said, and she shouldn't have to own that, right?
Right. No, she clearly did not say that. She said that black and Latinos are not one.
You were at the breakfast. I couldn't make it this year. You got what she was saying.
Absolutely.
So regardless of the journalistic mistake that was for a while a problem online and could have been even worse over a 24-hour news cycle, reflect on her points.
Well, you know.
By the way, welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And happy MLK holiday weekend.
Yes, sure.
Well, you know, I heard what she said, and she's from New York, you know, a city where the dynamics, I think, are a little bit different in terms of how long people have been in New York. I mean, the Latino community in New York has been there for decades, as opposed to the Latino community here being maybe in the last 30 or 40 years. So you got newcomers kind of coming to Rhode Island. And then the African American community, you have about 30 different countries involved. You probably have more non-African American black people in Rhode Island than any state in the country. And you might have more Latino countries per capita in Rhode Island than any other state in the country as well. So it's tough enough organizing a couple of groups, let alone 50 and 60 different groups, to do anything. I mean, imagine if you had to get the Ukrainians and the Italians together with the Irish and the Norwegians to do anything. It might be a little bit difficult. And that's what, you know, is the challenge that we have.
Well, you know, it's a fascinating conversation because you're right. I think it's a intellectually lazy thing to think that people who would fall under the brand of black are all the same,
Right.
Or African American or any. But at the same time, despite these legitimate ancestry and origin differences and all that kind of thing, there is a collective battle here that she's referring to.
There is, because who's being affected are black and brown people. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're from Alabama or Liberia. You're being affected because of the color of your skin. So there's an urgency to work more collaboratively and collectively together. You know, you have to figure out how best that can happen, and sometimes it's harder to figure out what the best way to go. There's not really a situation where people disagree. I think it's more, well, how do we approach it more, collectively? So there is an urgency. We're the ones being affected: Black, Brown, Asian, Southeast Asian primarily, and Native American. So it's incumbent upon us to figure out a way to fight this, because our kids are the ones taking it on the chin the most.
Okay, we'll talk about what's going on in the school system and some of the other issues that Jim will raise in theme with the holiday. Stay with us.
Too often we are looking at people and not talking to people.
The Rhode Island Ministers Alliance honoring the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Monday.
But one of the underlying issues that people often forget is the economic ties that are related to race.
Governor Gina Raimondo acknowledging racial and economic inequality in the state.
To truly honor his legacy, we need to do the hard work.
Working to make a change, she announced new criminal justice reform.
The legislation improves access to health care for incarcerated individuals, improves the work release programs. It brings our job training programs behind the prison walls so people can get training and apprenticeships and internships while they're in prison, so that when they leave, they have an opportunity for a decent job and a house.
To address sentencing, probation, and parole, Governor Gina Raimondo created the Justice Reinvestment Working Group in her first term. Through new budget proposals, the governor hopes to implement their recommendations.
Let's be there for them so they can have a shot at a good job and a house and health care, to be there for their families and rehabilitate and bring about the vision of equality and justice for all in Rhode Island.
All right, so listen, the breakfast is traditional. The politicals and movers shakers, come. I thought the Ed Commissioner said something interesting yesterday in her speech. She said, listen, it's nice to sit here and focus on words. Action means more. She's got a project and a half, on her plate. The governor has a kind of a different challenge. What was said there that was the most profound thing for you?
I think she said we need to talk about race and not zip codes. People in Rhode Island tend to shy away.
That was the commissioner.
The commissioner?
Yeah.
You're talking about the governor?
Anybody. In general, did something come away from the event this year where you say, doggone it,
I like the fact
money.
that the commissioner said we tend to talk about zip code and not race, because she's on the money. Zip codes is almost like another way of talking about race. But let's just talk about it the way you meant it. You meant race. You're trying to be nice by talking about zip codes. We know what that's meant. So she just hit it head on. She said, look, I'm black, so I know who I am. And there are people that would like to say, well, there's Latinos, and then there's black, there's this, there's that. And she said, look, I'm not going to play into any of that division thing. I know who I am, and I know what the problem is. And I'm going to go straight at it. And it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, because, you have teachers, I know she said at a previous meeting, that use the N-word in class. And that's not okay.
Well, I mean,
that's not okay. So she speaks like that.
That's got to be an anomaly.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't.
That's just. I just can't. I mean, that just makes me twitch.
Well, I hope it is. I hope it is. I don't know. She didn't elaborate, but that just suggests perhaps that we have a problem.
Did she refer to that in the breakfast?
No. This was at another meeting.
Well, this is the thing that's interesting about that. And I don't even consider this to be a criticism. It would be an add-on suggestion to the commissioner's speech, which I heard in full and thought was pretty gutsy. Anecdotes are important. Because you can talk about this thing that she was trying to identify, meaning a battle within the minority community, say black and Latino for lack of a better brand. But people need to know what the example is, and I'm guessing she's got a lot of them in her hand right now. Usually, though, examples end up naming names or situations, and then it gets very uncomfortable. So the next step of courage seems to be, okay, here's an example of how it can't go. Right? And until we get to some clinical examples of what this dynamic is all about, it's hard to fix. One step at a time, I get it, it's a breakfast, all that. But don't you agree?
I do agree, and I think that what she's getting ready to do is those examples, one at a time, and people are going to feel very uncomfortable. And that's too bad, because she says we're in a crisis situation, so if you feel uncomfortable, then jump off the ship, because You know, Providence is one of the worst school systems, if not the worst, in the country, okay? You have other school systems, Chicago, Newark, Detroit, you name the system, where you have kids would have the identical socioeconomic characteristics, if not worse, and they achieve better. So we got to loop it back to the system. It's the system. Let's not blame the kids. It's the system.
And so do you think the system is faulty simply because of archaic processes and gunked up bureaucracy and politics? Or where does the race thing affect that? I think that's where people want to get an understanding.
I think it's everything you said and also the race thing. And I think the race thing, you know, is a major factor.
How does it play?
People just don't care about those kids. To too many Rhode Islanders, Providence kids are those kids, not our kids. They're those kids. Even though they were Rhode Islanders, they're not looked upon as being Rhode Islanders. That's a problem because Providence is the capital city, and so goes Providence, so goes the state. So you can't, there's no other. I mean, we're all in this together. And if you start thinking of those kids are expendable, then that's when your state becomes expendable.
Well, you know, I've made that speech. You and I are on the same page in terms of Providence and the state, and ever since I got here, I mean, it's common sense. If not for, excuse me, if not for any other reason, I would want it to be empathy and a feeling of collective humanity and all the things that are the right reasons to consider those kids to be our kids. But at the end of the day, to borrow a cliche, it's all our money.
Right.
It's all our money. I live in Cumberland. Guess what? My tax dollars are paying for Providence in a big way. So let's go, man.
Right.
Enough of this.
Protect your investment. I mean, it is your money. And I think because it's those kids, that's how it's looked upon. That's why you have the archaic system and the layers and all the stuff that, you know, you wouldn't have anywhere else but a place where people don't care about those kids.
Are you bullish on change?
I'm bullish on change. I'm glad she's here. I'm glad she's talking the way she's talking. Because when you have, I mean, I'm from Boston. The Boston Public Schools, when I was growing up, was thought of as being one of the worst public school systems in the country. When I was in 10th grade, Jonathan Kozol, who's an education expert, or he was back then, wrote a book, Death at an Early Age, The Destruction of the Hearts and Minds of the Negro Children in the Boston Public Schools. And I know my grammar school, it was on page 48, my junior high school was on page 76. And I was reading it as a freshman in college, and I said, how did I ever escape that? How did I ever escape that? So I thought I would never again see something like that until I came here. And arguably, the Providence schools are worse than Boston ever was.
I don't want to harp on this, but there's one example that I've offered, and I just didn't get a lot of leadership to step up, and I didn't hear you on it. And that is when Mayor Lorza, back prior to the school year, encouraged the people in the neighborhoods with the half a dozen schools that were in such a dilapidated shape to come paint. It was a painting day or two, you know, and it was inclusive and participatory. And I looked at it and I said, that's systemic racism. You wouldn't ask the taxpayers of Cumberland or Coventry to come paint the schools.
Well, that's
I'm telling you, if you can't call that the same kind of problem that you're referring to.
Well, I mean, I don't think he looked upon, you know, that as,
because he's clueless.
Well, I don't want to say that.
Well,
either.
I do.
Okay.
I don't have any problem saying that.
All right.
He's absolutely clueless
All right.
because you go. It's this kind of thing like, look, guess what? You better kick in and help paint the school because your taxpayer dollar didn't get the school ready. It wouldn't. Nobody would stand for that in any suburban school in this state.
I think if he saw the fact that, you know, Providence was being talked about as one of the worst school systems in the country, and then, you know, one of your first responses is to do that. That might not be what you want to do.
It was one of his first responses.
Well, so I guess maybe he might have thought that out more. Yeah. Not to say you don't do it, but maybe the positioning of being one of the first things that he said might not have.
But it treats those constituents as second-class citizens. Anyway, we don't have to belabor the point. I'm just throwing it out there as, if we want examples, that's the kind of almost subtle racism that I think that you've been battling your entire career. It builds into the system of, you know what, these people, they can come out and paint their old damn school. Now, if that was a practice across the state, fine, but it's not. And these are the things, hey, we're broke, so you can come pitch in.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be broke.
I think he has a good heart.
Whatever. It's, you know, that's a default. When we come back, Jim says it's been a tough 3 years. We'll ask why. Stay with us.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
You know, I wonder what Martin would think about today. We all wonder what our parents and grandparents and ancestors would think about today. You said in an op-ed piece this week that this has been a tough 3 years. Give me a short reason why.
It's been a tough 3 years because after 8 years of Barack Obama, first African-American president, a person which I never thought I would see a black president in my lifetime. So, I mean, I was thrilled to see that America had come to a point where they could elect a black president, given the history of race in this country. So I was like, you know, the thrill of victory. And then right after him, hearing about S-hole countries and, you know, go back to where you came from and Mexicans are rapists, I started feeling more like the agony of defeat. It was almost like I was playing sports and I won a big game, but then the next game I lost. I got killed because it was so bad. I said, this guy, you know, is... I mean, most racists are smart enough not to say the things that he said, you know, but he just said it. I don't care. You know, I got my base. I'm going to say it. I'm not going to be politically correct. You know, I don't like people of color, period. And I'm going to let my base know that I'm with a lot of them in that sentiment. And I don't think it's politically calculated. At first I thought it was politically calculated. Then I just saw that that's really him.
Where do you think we're going to go? Impeachment aside, I mean, everybody's it's a you know 1 in 100 shot that he gets convicted. So we'll see, unless there's some major development. It's going to be a heck of a 2020 race. What's your view on the national African-American vote here? Because it seems to me it's instrumental, and I'm not so sure it's going to be there. You got a minute.
I think it's going to be critical.
You think it's going to be there?
I think it's going to be there. I think what's going to happen is that the nominee, whoever that nominee is going to be, it probably won't be a person of color or a black person. They'll pick a person that represents the backbone of the Democratic Party, which would be an African-American woman. It'll be probably either Kamala Harris or Stacey Abrams or somebody like that. They will live in Milwaukee, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Their job will be not to go around the country, but their job will be to get the turnout, black turnout, the way it was in 2012 with Barack Obama. The Democrats are going to win Wisconsin, they're going to win Michigan, they're going to win Pennsylvania, and that's it. Then the election's over, because mathematically through the Electoral College, there'll be nowhere else for Trump to go.
So you can see Jim is committed to the strategy because he's drawing it, as he says, that you've drawn it a lot. I mean,
right. I think that if they win those 3 states...
That's the mechanics of this election that you're talking about.
Right. I think that they win those 3 states, and I think it's doable if the black support is as good as it was in 2012. I don't see a way for him from the Electoral College to get the popular vote to win. I think it's impossible. He's done.
Don't be a stranger. Lots to talk about. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right, Jim. I'll see you. Final word when we come back. Stay with us. Clarify the audio we used earlier in the day with Commissioner Infante Green was part of her statement about black and Latino are not one in Rhode Island. There's a latter part of that with the wording explicit. You can catch that on our podcast on WPRO at 997WPRO.com. But believe me, that was a near disaster. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the radio and back here tomorrow night. Good night.